The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
It might seem crazy what I'm about to say. Sunshine, she's here, you can take a break. I'm a hot air balloon that could go to space. With the air, like I don't care, baby, by the way. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like a room without a roof. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like happiness is the truth. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you know what happiness is to you. Because I'm happy.
Oh, that is awesome. Thank you so much, Samantha. That was a surprise for me, you guys. It is, in fact, my birthday today. And thank you, Samantha. And Samantha got me this fabulous mug that says that I'm the boss lady, which is completely wrong. And she's finding out. She's really in charge here. But thank you for that. That was awesome. I love those. I used to love, too, in the mall when you would go. Jim and Jem used to do this for me all the time. They would have those booths where you could go and pick a song, and it would just like this, oh, there's a fabulous one of Jim and Jem doing Venus for me for my birthday. It still makes me wee whenever I watch it because I laugh so hard. That's awesome. I love that. Too fun. Well, thank you so much, and I'm thrilled to be here. In case you don't know, I'm Shannon Penrod, and this is Autism Live on my birthday. I'm this many years old, but thrilled to be here with you this morning. We are going to be with you for the next 2 hours for this special show where we're going to revisit some things that we've done here because it's my birthday, and I have this mistaken notion from childhood that when it's your birthday, you get to have it your way. It's not true. It just isn't true, as evidenced by the fact that I had to go back home this morning because Jem left his backpack at home and didn't put it in the car. EF skills, executive functions. So I did not get to have it my way. I had to go back and get his backpack and bring it back to school, which meant I got to see him one more time. So I guess that's good. But my point is, for the show, I said, I want to have it my way. So we're going to show a bunch of my favorite clips and have me talk about them briefly, each one of those. So I'm really excited about that and excited that you guys can write in and we can talk about stuff. And if you have something pressing, a question for me, happy to, head everything off at the pass to address that. Want to take a second to talk to you, though, about the fact that this show is meant to be a discussion, a two-way discussion between you and me and everybody else. So please feel free to interact with us. Samantha is going to show you some of the different ways that you can get a hold of us here at the show and some of the different ways that you can be watching the show. First of all, our homepage is autism-live.com. And when you go there, there's a lot of things to do. You can be watching the live show, watch a recently recorded live show, or watch any one of the 100 most recent recorded shows from that site. But you can also interact with us on something called the live feature, which is that series of white boxes. And there's one that says your question. If you type whatever you want to type there, hit enter, it shows up on my screen. I have the choice of showing it to people at home or not showing it. And a lot of times I don't show it if there's something in the communication that I think might even remotely identify the person who's on the spectrum. We want to, or you, because we want you to maintain your anonymity. I think that's a really important thing, unless you choose not to. In which case we're good with that too. And sometimes people will write to us and say it's okay to say this or it's okay to show that, and then we do. But in any case, we want want to have the conversation with you. I always like to remind you we have a lot of different experts, and we're going to show you some videos that have some of the experts that we've had on the show. But I like to make sure that everybody knows right from the jump that I am not one of the experts. My credentials to sit in this chair are that I am a really, really lucky autism mom. And my son was diagnosed with autism at the age of 2.5. He's 13, almost 13 and a half already. And he's doing wonderfully because of the help and support that we got, most especially from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, which is why I always say such nice things about them, because, gosh, they saved our lives. There's no, like, I've tried to find other ways that sound less dramatic. It's the truth. They saved our lives. And I feel an obligation to try to help you guys to get to whatever it is that you need, whatever that may be. I know that there are resources out there for you, and I want to help you to do that because I have so much to pay forward. So write and tell me, what do you need? What are you feeling like? We can just sit and hold hands, because I like that, because I always say we do this together, si se puede, right? You, me, and everybody else, we do this together. And by the way, I say all of us together because to me that's the autism community. That's parents, that's teachers, that's therapists, loved ones who are in the periphery, from aunts and uncles and grandparents. It most especially is people who are on the spectrum themselves, and everyone who cares about them. That's a pretty big community, and I feel inclusive about that community, and I hope that you do too. I feel like we all have a seat at the table here to get to and we all need to have a seat at the table in order to get to the progress that we all want to see. We're getting there inch by inch, but together, si se puede, right? We can do this. So in any case, we still, even though it's my birthday, and I'm still having it my way. My way is to start with jargon. So ladies and gentlemen, it is time for the jargon du jour. This is when we take on one word, one phrase, one acronym, and we try to figure out, what are the experts talking about? Why are they talking about it? Why are they wasting their breath to tell us about it? And if they're going to waste the breath, why wouldn't they use regular terms? But most especially, why should I care? How is this going to help me to get to that progress that I'm trying to see? So today's term, you ready for this? Preference assessment. Yeah, I'm on the wrong side. I can't do my Carol Merrill. Preference assessment. Why? You'll see in a minute. Okay, so first we take the actual definition, then we do a working definition. So let's take a look at the actual definition of a preference assessment. It is a procedure to determine the stimuli that a person prefers, the relative preference of those stimuli, and their presumed value as potential reinforcers. Oh, yippee skippy. I'm so glad we cleared that up. What does that even mean, right? Well, if you've dealt with reinforcers, you go, no, that makes total sense to me. But if you're new to the game, that hurts. That hurts my head a little bit. Okay, so let's move on to our working definition. A preference assessment is checking to see what might be most rewarding or reinforcing for someone. So let's go back to principle 1 of the ABA, which is that no one, I don't care, you're on the spectrum, you're not on the spectrum. No one that's living and breathing does anything over and over and over again unless there is something personally rewarding to them. Okay? So, and sometimes when we look at people's behavior and we go, wow, they really accomplished something. We look at an Olympic athlete and we look at how good they are at their sport and we go, wow, they got up and they practiced and they practiced and they practiced and they did it on days when it was cold and they did it on days when it was rainy and they did it on days when they didn't feel like it. You have to know that there was something about it that was reinforcing to them, that they keyed into that, and they made sure that there was something that stayed reinforcing to them. Because you think about, once upon a time, I watched the Olympics and went, ooh, I'd like to do that too, and went to go ice skating once without even the first lesson, and I fell down, hit my bum, and chipped my tailbone, and that wasn't very reinforcing to me, right? I guarantee you that a lot of the Olympic athletes have chipped more than a tailbone, right? But they kept going. What's the difference between me and them? They had something that made it reinforcing enough, made it worthwhile enough of a paycheck for them to keep doing it. Now, it's the thing about it is that it's different for everyone. Like I could, call up Simone Biles and go, okay, so what was it that was reinforcing for you? And then I could try to do that for myself. It's probably not going to work, right? Because what's reinforcing to one person, not reinforcing to me. It's why we have menus, right? It's why restaurants aren't, oh, this is the one dish we're serving, because we all want it different. And, there are chains of restaurants who say, have it your way, right? That's why I said on your birthday, you get to have it your way. It's your preference assessment. See how that all makes sense? Okay, so when we're doing ABA with a child, and by the way, this works for negative stuff too. So, your friend who smokes like a chimney and you've been begging them to stop forever, and you're like, why do they do that? Why would anybody anymore, with what we know about cigarette smoke and what it does to you, why would anyone smoke? Because there's something that's reinforcing about it. And until we figure out what it is that's reinforcing about it and trade that reinforcement for something that is more reinforcing to do something that's different or fulfill that need someplace else, they're going to smoke, right? Okay, now let's move this idea to autism. So we have things, here we have these children or teenagers or adults, right? That perhaps there are deficits in their skill sets because of, not because of autism, but because of some of the ways that that autism has interacted for them. So maybe we've got somebody who has some skills now, but there's gap skills, missing skills. And we want to teach some things. And when we teach something, really what we're trying to do is have a behavior happen more often, right? And then there are some behaviors that we want to shape and mold and make more functional because the way that the behavior is happening isn't useful to them. Like smoking, not useful to a person, right? It's not a functional behavior. It doesn't gain you anything that helps you to be able to do your job better, right? I guess there are probably some exceptions to that, but really. So we want to either grow a skill or diminish a skill. So we need to look at what somebody wants to make it worthwhile enough. And that's what a preference assessment is. And you might think to yourself, well, okay, that's all fine and dandy, except that, I have an 18-month-old baby that is showing signs of autism. And so there's no expressive language and there's very little receptive language. They don't understand what I'm saying. They don't get anything. How am I going to ask the baby, what do you want? What do you want to work for, right? It's very simple. It's so you take three things, and I'm going to use my cup, my Post-its, and my pen. And these would, actually, an 18-month-old baby, it would be interesting to see which one that they would go for. But obviously, you want to pick things that are more appropriate for an 18-month-old baby, right? So maybe you would have a stuffed animal, a book that makes squeaky noises when you push on the little bunny's tail, and a favorite block or something here, and you just set them there and you don't presume anything, and you set the baby down and you see which one the baby goes over to. Now maybe the baby comes over to this and picks this up. Okay, great. Now should we just we go wonderful, and we want to reinforce for the baby for picking one, right? And so we tickle them and we play with them and do whatever, and in the course of all that we sneakily take this back away from them so it doesn't turn into a thing where we tease them with it, right? We distract them with other stuff. We take it back and we want to move these things around, because I don't know why they chose the pad. They might have chosen the pad, I'm a little out of my shot here. They might have chosen the pad because it was in the middle. Or they might have chosen the pad because it was yellow. I don't know. And it really doesn't behoove me to guess, right? What have I gained by that? Because I can take 3 seconds and I can move the order around, right? And so now the pad is on the side here, and I put the baby down and I, let the baby pick which one the baby wants, and the baby goes to the pen now. Well, now I'm starting to see a pattern here. It's possible that the baby is liking the ones that are in the middle, in which case I might move this around again and go like this and see, now do they go for the cup, right? Whatever. but as a child gets older, we're going to change this up a lot. Once the child has expressive language, whether it's verbal expressive language where they can say, I want toy, or it's something where they're doing a picture iconic communication system, where a picture exchange, where they give you the picture of the toy and say that I want this. We want to identify what makes it meaningful for someone. When our kids are older, it is a discussion. I had a discussion with my son in the car today about a quiz that he has that I need him to do a little bit more studying during his lunch period. And I said to him, okay, so what's going to make it worthwhile for you to get a 100? And his response was, I don't know. Right? So I start throwing out some suggestions. Well, would it be worthwhile for you, to have this? Would it be worthwhile for you to have that? And, I can pretty much tell now, because it'd be like, yeah, no, that'd be worthwhile. Now, is that worthwhile enough? No. And I finally, because my kid is very odd and weird, I said, how about I buy smoked salmon if you get 100 on this vocabulary quiz today? He's like, oh, that'd be great. That'd be sweet. Smoked salmon? Yeah. So, then I know, okay, for this moment in time, it might be that smoked salmon is reinforcing enough for him to study during lunch to get, I don't know for sure until we see how he did on the test. If I see that he got a 100 on the test, I want to immediately go and get that smoked salmon and give it to him and be like, woohoo, that worked this time. That's good information. If I see that he didn't get a 100 on the test, I want to go back and look at, what went wrong. Did he study? Was he motivated enough? And I would try to see if there's a bigger reward to see if we can get to the 100 on or is there something else going on, right? But here's the kicker with preference assessments is that we all tend to be a little lazy on this. And that's everybody across the board, right? Because it's a step. It's a step that you got to do, that you got to check in. It takes some energy. It takes some communication skills. It takes a little bit of guesswork, but not a lot of guesswork. And it takes tenacity. You got to keep, we get so upset sometimes when our kids perseverate on something. We need to perseverate on preference assessments in life. Not just with our kiddos who are on the spectrum. We need to perseverate on that a little bit and keep checking in with people and going, okay, so what makes you happy? And then noticing, did it in fact make them happy? Because sometimes people say, what I want is this, and then they discovered, not what I wanted. So with the preference assessments, we need to, the expression they say about vote early and vote often, it's a joke, right? That's what we need to do with preference assessments. We need to get in their early, ask preference, and do it often, over and over and over again. Because if I say to you, what would you like to have to drink right now? And you go, well, I would like to have some organic lemonade, Shannon. And I go, fabulous. And I pour you a glass of organic lemonade and you go, oh my gosh, this is so good. This is the best organic lemonade that I've ever had. And you drink the whole glass. And now I say to you, would you like another glass of organic lemonade? You might say, yes, it was so good. I need to have another glass of organic lemonade. Or you might go, no, I'm good. I've had enough organic lemonade for right now. At some point, everyone will have had enough organic lemonade. But I don't know when that point is. And if I just keep pouring organic lemonade, what's going to happen? I both love it and kind of tee up my sleeve because I'm so guilty of this, you guys. But I love it when you guys write in and you say, so, I was offering the reward of this and it was working and everything was fine. And now it's a week later and it's not working anymore. Well, because that's how it works. So what we know from that equation is I offered a reward and I picked well the first time and it worked and my child's behavior changed. And now I keep giving that reward, but there's a term for it even. It's called satiation. Well, my kid has had enough of that and now it's no longer working. It's not like it lost its magic, right? It isn't. It's that they're full of it. So when we have something that's really reinforcing, we kind of want to hoard it and save it a little bit and use it for things that we really want to do. And we always want to make sure that the reward that we're giving meaningful and that it's appropriate in terms of size. And what determines that is how hard is the activity and how much does the person need to be motivated. If you need me to do my taxes today, you need to give me something substantial because I don't want to do it, right? Whereas if you want me to make a phone call to somebody and tell them that they're wonderful and that we appreciate them, you don't have to offer me anything because I'm happy to do that, right? So you're not going to offer me a brand new car for calling somebody to say that they're wonderful. I'd love it if you offered me a brand new car for doing my taxes. I'd start right now, right? And who wouldn't? Some people, because preference assessments are personal. So that's what we want to say about that. Anytime you're working with somebody in any capacity, doesn't have to be a person on the autism spectrum, ask yourself today, what would it be like? What's the thing that you've been avoiding doing? Maybe it's cleaning the garage. Maybe it's exercising. Maybe it's calling somebody you've had a falling out with, right? It could be any one of a million things. What have you kind of been avoiding? And ask yourself, all right, so what would make it worthwhile for me to do that? What would I need to get to make it worthwhile? And notice that if you find the right thing, suddenly it gets easier to do that thing and you just do it, right? Our kids need incentives to be able to do some of the hard things that they have to do. Let's make sure that it's the right incentive, because what ends up happening is you have happy kids. Now, I know a lot of you are worried, well, then my child is on this thing of, well, every time I do something, I get something. Well, that's life. And I know that you guys all have this idea in your head that was planted, I don't know by who, I have had it myself, where, life isn't like that. Every time you do something, you don't get something, except that you kind of do. We all get paid, right? There are people who volunteer, but they get a paycheck because they feel good about themselves for having volunteered and they feel good about making a difference, right? You just got to look to see what the paychecks are. I really want to encourage you, play with it. I set aside your fears for a week and say to yourself, what if my whole world revolved around this? What if I said to my child, hey, we're going to do X, Y, and Z, and you're going to get this for it, and then see how the quality of your life goes up. I think you'll want to do it again and again and again, because that's what makes happy people, is getting things that are meaningful to them, and that's different for everyone. All right, I belabored that. Moving on, we always have a question of the day, and our question for you to do, it goes hand in hand with the preference assessment, right? Name something you used to love, but now you're sick of it. What have you had enough of? There are shows that I will watch. I'm a big television watcher, and there are shows that I will watch and I will get really, really into them. And then, I just get over it, as do millions of other people, which is why shows can be a hit show one year and then poof, the next year, nobody's watching it, and so it goes off the air. All right, we all can name something. So what are you looking at right now that you used to love, and now it's just like, it's not like you hate it or anything, it's just not a big deal. And then think about that with individuals that you know that are on the autism spectrum, because they have the same preferences that we do, that come and go, and think about, have I refreshed? There are different love experts who talk about the languages of love and realizing what make other people feel like they're loved, and asking the people around you, what makes you feel like you're loved? For some people, it's being spoken to in a certain way and hearing words of, I love you. For other people, it's a touch thing. They want to be hugged and touched, and that really makes them feel loved. And for other people, it's doing something for them or giving them a gift, right? And here's the crazy part, is that we all assume that what makes us happy is what will make other people happy. And that's when we get into trouble a lot of times. So I, want to hug my child all the time, because that's when he hugs me, that's when I feel loved, right? So I want to hug him. That's so not what makes him feel loved. And honesty, like, words are what make him feel loved. Not even I try to do all these things for him. Yeah, it doesn't really make him feel loved. a little bit, but it's the words that when I tell him I'm proud of him and that he's doing a good job, that's what makes him feel loved. So, find out what the love language is for all the people that you care about in your life, and start thinking about that. Okay, we always have a topic for our show on Thursdays, and our topic today is finding new reinforcers. That when this is all part of executive functions, what we call EF, is that if you have a goal, something that you want to do, something that you want to accomplish, it's important to figure out what the reinforcers are, what the why is, okay? So if what you want to do is to be able to run a mile in under 5 minutes, right? And you think to yourself, well, why? Why would that be important to me? And really anchor those why reasons with pictures in your head of, because then I will feel this way, and that looks like this, and I will, this thing will happen, and that thing will happen, anchoring that deeply for yourself. But then you've got to find reinforcers along the way, and you can't just go with one thing. So that if you say to yourself, okay, every morning that I get up and run and that I take 10 seconds off, I get to have French toast. Because 3 days down the road, you're going to be sick of French toast. So you need to find ways of reinforcing yourself that are different. And by the way, we need to do this for our kiddos who are on the autism spectrum. I think a lot of us are so relieved when we find the thing that is meaningful to our kids. When we started at CARD, I had to fill out a lengthy, pages. I mean, when you guys are having to do it now in skills, but I had to do it on a hard copy, about everything that my child liked and rate it from a 1 to a 5. And, do they like it more in the morning? Right? Because you need to be able to switch reinforcers. And there was very little that I could say that my son really, truly liked. Very little. He liked pirates and he liked swords. And beyond that, hot dogs. Okay. Done, and Buzz Lightyear. He liked Buzz Lightyear. So when we can find a new reinforcer, because if we only have Buzz Lightyear, we're quickly going to burn Buzz Lightyear out, right? He's going to get satiated with Buzz Lightyear. Or so much of the time we have to take Buzz Lightyear away so that when we need Buzz Lightyear, which feels like a drag, right? So we constantly want to be adding to anyone's repertoire more things that are reinforcing. And we do that by pairing it with something that's already reinforcing. So, we pick something that's similar. So if our kid loves Buzz Lightyear, then we've got the Buzz Lightyear toy, right? But now we get a book about Buzz Lightyear. And we play with Buzz Lightyear and we get out the book and we make it as exciting. And then eventually we fade out the Buzz Lightyear and we see that the child really is into the Buzz Lightyear book. And now we move on to adding something else. We always want to be adding to the repertoire of things that are meaningful reinforcers to ourselves and to our kids. All right, so we've got a big show for you guys today. As I said, it's Birthday Girl Choice, and so we're going to be showing you some of my favorite clips over the last almost 5 years of doing this show. And we're going to start with one of my favorite ones. This is Driving Dr. Grandin. We went to Texas. Kelby Wood and I and my son, we went to Texas for a conference that was being done for Future Horizons, a fantastic company. They have great books about autism. Future Horizons, FHautism.com, I believe is their website. Anyway, they had a lineup of great guests that we couldn't wait to talk to. Dr. Grandin, Dr. Jed Baker, who's one of my favorite. We didn't have time for him in the lineup today, or I would have put him in the lineup. We met with Alexis Weinman, and I think that we might show a clip from that a little bit later in the show if we have time, who was the first person to participate in a pageant who was openly on the spectrum. Amazing young woman. And Kara Kaczynski, who's the pocket OT. So great lineup. And we were asking, though, if we could have a little bit extra time with Dr. Grandin. And they said, well, would you like to take her to the airport? And we went, yes, we do. And we asked Dr. Grandin, can we film as we go? And I said to her that what started it all with Dr. Grandin was that there was an article that was done in New York Magazine about people who are on the spectrum. And the title of it was, I think it was A Philanthropist on Mars, I think was the title of it. And it featured information about her in an interview that the author, Oliver Sacks, had done with her. And in it, he didn't talk to her about autism, he talked to her about her life. And that's why we all became interested in Temple Grandin, but we became interested in her and wanted to know everything about autism from her. And I said to her, you know, nobody's done that kind of interview with you since. And I said, I don't want to talk about autism. I want to talk about everything else but autism. Can we do it in the car? She said yes. This is what happened in the beginning. We have to do a shout out to Kel, because it was him making fun of me because we had practiced this drive so many times so that I wouldn't have to do this on camera, but look what I did anyway. Take a look. I got to do the U-turn around the thing? Okay. So, Kelby, do I want the north entry or the south, or does it matter? Okay. Are we doing curbside bag check? Which way, Kelby? Left? Yeah. Kelby, can I go through the T? Yeah, I have a toll tag.
Then you go through the T.
Okay. What do you do that, like, you could just spend 2 hours doing and have it suck all your time?
Oh, I like to look up interesting research articles on animal behavior. Found a really interesting European papers on how wolves are different than dogs that I read last week that were very, very interesting.
Very cool.
Because I've always talked about a brain can be more social emotional or a brain can be more cognitive.
Yeah.
And the wolf turns out to be more cognitive, and we've bred the dog to be more social emotional.
How fascinating is that?
Very, very interesting. The wolves were very good at watching another wolf solve a problem.
We were talking a little bit about television before, and I cannot believe that what you said to me, what you like to watch on television.
Star Trek. I was a Star Trek fan when I was a teenager. I liked the Star Trek Next Generation. I was watching that when I was working on my PhD in the 80s.
And so what?
Total Star Trek fan.
What's your favorite series, and what's your favorite character, and what's your favorite
Mr.
episode?
Spock was my favorite character.
Love it. And what's favorite episode? This guy is
let
going
me
to hate
see.
me.
There was a lot of good. My favorite Star Trek movie was the one with the whales.
Yes.
Yep, I really
mine
liked
too.
that Star Trek movie.
And so sad that we lost Leonard Nimoy this year.
Yeah.
So I didn't know that you like to watch television. Do you like to go to the movies too?
Oh yes, I went and saw Gravity. There's certain movies that have to be seen in a theater, like Gravity and Avatar.
Yes.
I wanted to see Inside Out in the theater. I really liked that movie.
What did you think of that?
I liked it. I think about how the emotions interact.
I gotta be honest, I had said after that I thought that it was going to be a great tool for people to show kids on the autism spectrum about perspective taking.
Yeah.
About what it's like in other people's heads.
Well, no, it's more like how the emotions inside your own head sort of conflict with each other.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love The Wizard of Oz, and I love the idea of the ruby slippers. She had the way back home. She just didn't know she had it.
Yeah.
You see, and I think that's a metaphor for a lot of things. A lot of people have the ruby slippers, but they don't know they have them. They don't know they have the key that can open up the door to a lot of really great stuff.
So what would you say was your ruby slipper?
Well, I had, when some opportunities came up, like when I designed those dip vats, that was a major breakthrough for my business. And when the head of the feed yard came up to me and asked me if I'd do it, I said, give me 3 weeks. You know, a lot of people would have been too scared to walk through the door. Now, this is pre-internet, and I knew it would take me 3 weeks to get some of the information I needed, especially on concrete reinforcement, to design the dip vats.
But you did it.
I did it. I was on the phone the next day to the USDA to get the drawings on the concrete reinforcement.
Wow. So I want to journey back to childhood for just a second and talk about friends, because a lot of times people ask about friends. Who was your best friend?
When I was in elementary school, one of my best friends was a girl named Eleanor. And she was the first girl in elementary school to get to take wood shop instead of cooking. And I was the second girl in our school to get to take wood shop. So we like to make stuff. It's all about making stuff. And I had good friends in high school. Even though I got bullied and teased, I got friends who shared interests. Riding horses together, doing electronics together, doing model rockets together, doing stuff together with other students.
So you found, like your mom says about, you found your tribe.
Yeah, and you've got to get them in doing things with other people.
And you did a lot of theater, and did you sing as a kid?
Yeah, I did. One of the problems I was singing is I couldn't synchronize my rhythm with somebody else's rhythm.
Do you still have a hard time doing that?
I still have a hard time doing that.
Because we were going to ask you if you wanted to sing something in the car with us.
Well, I think maybe we'll skip that.
Great question. But the one question people always ask us is they want to know if you've ever been in love.
No, never have.
And you don't feel like you're missing anything.
I've seen so much turmoil in so many marriages that I haven't really seen a situation that would be a good model.
And yet you gave me really good marriage advice.
Because I'm a good problem solver. You have to take the problem and cut it down. And in engineering, you have to find the root cause of a problem.
What do you think is your secret to your success as a teacher?
Well, presenting things really clearly.
Yeah.
That's really important. Making things interesting.
Yeah.
I think it's also important that it's something in a class that a student can take home and use. I teach a class in cattle behavior and handling, and I've got a lot of students that are pre-vet that are going to go in the dog and cat. Probably won't be handling any cattle. But I said, you want to design this corral system because it's visual problem solving. You have to figure out how to do it. It's not a cookbook. And then I have my internet project where they can pick out anything in animal behavior, and I make them dig into a narrow subject that I have to approve because I want them digging into Google Scholar and PubMed, Science Direct, and the other databases. They got to learn how to find stuff online, and I'm finding about 2/3 of the students are not very good at that. How about this? Make Magazine. This is the kind of thing that a lot of kids on the spectrum need to be doing. The cool stuff in here. Really
Make Magazine is going to love that you
Make
did that.
Magazine. It's a wonderful magazine. And I'm okay. Yes, and they're resurrecting old satellites from mission control and an abandoned McDonald's. That's the kind of stuff I really like. These are the kind of magazines we need to get in the school. Make Magazine, Business Week, Science, Nature, Wired. We got to show kids out there. There's all kinds of super interesting stuff out there.
Open
but
up
if
the
they don't
brains.
see it, then they don't know about it.
Yeah, the
I
other
like
night.
to geek out on construction sites.
Yeah.
I like to salivate over all the equipment they've got that we didn't have, like really cool man lifts and nice scaffolding. We didn't have any of that stuff.
You didn't.
No, we didn't.
What did you guys have?
Horrid,
compass?
Horrid ladders that were really dangerous is what we had.
I'm going to pull up right here. Okay. We're going to get your stuff out. Yep. Put your back up. Oh. We have to get the mic back from you too. Oh, you took it off already. You're good. That's attached to mine. So much fun. I want to do it again. Really, really fun. And we want to thank everybody who made it possible, especially Dr. Grandin herself. She was such a good sport about it. I just so enjoy spending time with her. She gets so tickled by things, and to watch her see the construction site at the Dallas airport was worth everything. I will never forget that as long as I live. Really, really fun. And I want to do a shout out too to Make Magazine, who really made that whole interaction. And by the way, they have a new edition that's on the newsstand right now. That's a Halloween edition that is so much fun. My son and I have been going through it. It's so much fun. I'm just going to say that. So check it out. It's on newsstands, and in particular, you can get it at Sprouts, and you can also subscribe to it. So that's Make Magazine. Okay, our next fun clip that we're going to go to, and the thing that I enjoyed more than anything else, I don't think we included, I don't think it's in there, but it's one of the pictures on my banner on my personal Facebook. We went to the LA Zoo, and we took the dad and Jack Riley from the A Word with myself and Jem, and we had a therapist, Jessica, with us, and we had the whole Autism Live crew that went off to the LA Zoo, which ended up being, a big amount of people on what is probably the hottest day of the year. And so if we look like we've all been hosed down, it's not pretty. Okay, I'm just going to say that. But it was a super, super duper fun occasion. It was so neat to see my son be the older kid. Delightful. But there was at one point when I interviewed a goat, and as I said, I don't think we included it in this interview, but it was so much fun. There is footage of it somewhere, and there is a picture of me interviewing the goat. One of the best interviews I've ever done. In any case, take a look. This is Autism Live and the A Word Go to the Zoo. We are here at the Los Angeles Zoo. We've got quite a group here. I've got my son, Jem, Mike from the A-Word, and Jack Riley, star of the A-Word, and Jessica. We've got a whole crew of people, and we're going to take a tour around the LA Zoo and see some exciting animals. Sound good, you guys?
What are the safety rules, though? Who do you have to stay next to?
Daddy and Dita.
So remember what we talked about, that every time you do something good, I'm going to write it on my hand. When you get 35 of these, what are you going to get?
3 hours of eating.
Yes, it's not a secret. You can tell people. What kinds of things do you need to do to get a mark on my hand?
Being kind. And good listening. Jem, can you show him where the chimpanzees are? Can you point it out to him?
Show Jack Riley. And tell us what your responsibilities are here at the LA Zoo.
I am the manager of volunteer programs at the Greater Los Angeles Zoo Association. I oversee the docents, the student volunteers, the general volunteers, and community service volunteers.
Give us an overview of what kinds of things people can see at the zoo.
There are lots of animals to see. We have a lot of endangered. We participate in a lot of conservation programs, and we offer a lot of education programs for our community, for school groups, for members, special needs.
What kinds of accommodations can you make when somebody has specific issues?
We have our special needs outreach program, and where we have a van that goes out into the community, and we bring a handful of animals to facilities that can't quite get to the zoo. So that could be a school, that could be a retirement community, that could be a hospital, and there's some courthouses that we visit as well. And we bring a couple animals and we talk about them, and it's kind of a fun experience. So that's our outreach program. And then on grounds, we also have tours, and we offer special needs tours for people catered to their needs. We have our petting zoo, so you can go and you can pet some goats.
We're here with from Autism Live, and we were wondering if you could tell us what it's like to be a goat in the zoo. Really?
And we have our condor rescue zone, so you can go in and pretend you are a condor, or you could be a biologist, or you could be a vet, and it's kind of fun.
Thank you for all the work that you do here and for making it accessible for all of our kids. Here with Janet Jackson. Janet, tell us what your role at the zoo is.
My role is a docent, and we're volunteers.
How did you learn all the things that you know?
Well, that's the great thing about the Los Angeles Zoo. We have a special docent program. It's one of the most stringent ones in the country. Actually, it's UCLA accredited class.
Well, it added so much to our visit to the zoo today, so I thank you for all your knowledge and all your giving to the community.
Well, thank you, because I had a special needs child too, and I think it's so important that they interact with animals, and that helped my son when he was going through so much trauma, that we saw that he was able to grow and to expand a little bit, and it just helped us as parents because we had a tool to use, and we saw the love and the care that he was able to bring out just by touching animals and being around animals, because there is no judgment there.
Amen to that. Well, thank you for paying it forward, because you are. I definitely saw you doing that today. Thank you so much.
Thank you for being here.
What was hard for you guys today at the zoo, do you feel?
To be completely honest, I was about to say this is the easiest, best outing I can recall. My concerns are I think we're sort of past elopement, but it's always on my mind when it's just with the two of us out in a, you know, you can get 20 feet away if it's busy and be lost, you know, be misplaced. But nothing like that happened today. There were a lot of people helping me, of course.
It was interesting for me because Jem hasn't been here since he was 3, like right after we started therapy. And I remember that was hellish, the day that we were here. Sometimes I don't notice the progress until we're out someplace like this. Do you feel like that's true too?
Yes, today I was actually comfortable with him being 15, 20 feet away. And even if he wasn't holding anybody's hand or anything, I was comfortable. And that's a new feeling.
I watched that and I said, man, there's no way we could have done that at that age. So he's doing really well. And I was so engaged by how Jack Riley is so aware of the circumstances around him. He's really doing great.
Yeah, thank you. He's curious. And he's just learned a lot. I mean, I can't give enough credit to Miss Jessica. No disrespect to any of our other therapists, and she's been with him for the whole time. So that's a constant in his life, and I dread the day when she's not.
It's always amazing. You know, we had our rock star on our team. There's always one therapist that just becomes a part of your family forever. What would you say to parents who are afraid to do it even with an aide?
I understand your fear, because I've always had it. But sometimes they surprise you. I know it's called a spectrum for a reason, and my son is not like any other son or daughter, and so I can't advise you on what may or may not happen. We were always worried about transitions. They're getting better because we do it, and explain what is expected before you get here. That was a hard lesson for me to learn, but every time I don't explain to him the expectations, I have more problems. I have more transitional issues, but when he knows what transitions he's going to face that day, he handles it. So my advice would be talk it out, but come do it and come again, even if it's a horrible experience, because it might be. You got to do it the first time before you can do it the second time. So.
I think in general, I mean, you know, I explained the expectations here and we carried it out of my hand. I agree with you. It's super duper important. I think it's good for us too, because then we know what we're expecting too.
And they've engaged each other a little bit, which I was very happy to see.
Thank you so much for coming and doing this play date with us. We had a really great time.
Well, thank you for having me. I enjoyed it, and it's just a great experience. I can't wait to tell my wife how well he did. So.
And let's do it again sometime.
Okay, anytime.
Such a fun day and such a fun video. I want to thank Matt Scheller and Suzanne Oshinsky and Emily Goodwin for making that video. And I you know, I know we do things and it looks like I know what I'm doing, but I had a whole lot of help coming up with doing the token economy on my hand. I went to many BCBAs in the building and said, okay, I'm going to the zoo and I have a microphone and I'm going to have to juggle that. And normally I take his little sticker chart and I'm not going to be able to juggle that, but how am I going to make this worthwhile? And they worked through the whole thing with me. So don't think that, you know, I'm a genius and there is no Parent of the Year award coming for me. Let's just keep it real there, right? I had a whole lot of help figuring that out. And but I think, and I was so thrilled we did show that I interviewed the goat briefly. You didn't see how much I talked to the goat. And the reason why I talked to the goat was because every time I went to interview the one person at the zoo, the goat would just go crazy. And I said that, you know, that's behavior. The goat wants something. I think the goat wants to be interviewed. And as soon as I interviewed the goat was quiet. Okay, I'm just saying. But the thing that we did offer Jem for doing the hash marks on my hand was In-N-Out, and we did go for In-N-Out afterwards because he was so sweet and so well behaved while we were there, as was Jack Riley. It was a fun time. Okay, we showed the driving Dr. Grandin. We had so much fun doing that in the car that we said we got to do this again, and we want to do even more of them, but we took to the car again for a series that we started called The Road to Recovery. And it featured our very own Nick Yates. So take a look. This is luscious. you went to school up in Washington, and then you spent some time working, and just recently you've returned back to the LA area.
Correct.
And what are you hoping to achieve back here in LA? What's the plan?
You know, at the moment I don't really know what the long-term plan is, but I'm really enjoying the work I'm doing as an administrative assistant for the contracts department dealing with matters related to insurance. It really engages my mind.
Okay,
And
this I don't understand. Insurance is engaging?
yeah, it can be. I mean, just having to make sure that all your ducks are in a row, everybody's getting billed, has their authorizations. It's a complicated process, but I definitely like the challenge of it.
Like, what was your favorite class while you were at college?
So the way it works at Evergreen is that you have these multidisciplinary programs that usually make up a full-time load. My favorite program was one I took my junior year called Writing American Cultures, which basically focused on aspirations and realities. I mean, one thing particularly focused on was the contrast between ideals and realities, or, you know, the challenge of what one thinks of themselves versus what others think of themselves. And it was reading books such as Invisible Man and Replaceable You that helped me to realize the consequences of letting others define us.
Yeah.
And that just allowed me to break free when I realized that, because I think for so long I think I succumbed to others' definitions of me, but I would not do that anymore, because you're going to end up believing that you're devoid of something rather than being something or somebody and discovering new hobbies and talents and skills.
And so now you feel like you are at a place where you fully accept yourself instead of looking for other people for validation?
I do.
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
I'm twice your age, and I don't think I'm there yet, Nick.
Well, thanks
So
for
that's
reassuring.
that's pretty good that you're there at that young age. Everybody know what they want?
I do.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good.
How can I help you today?
Okay, Nick's gonna order first. Go
you.
for it.
I'd like to take a number 1, add grilled onions and pickles, animal style fries, and a Coke, please.
What do you think the biggest struggle was when you were young?
I think the biggest struggle by far is obviously wanting to be accepted for who I am, who I was and who I am, and not be defined by a neurological condition because of the troubles of, you know, having...
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Maybe 1161.
Thank you. Sorry, we're talking about something really important.
Yeah.
Tubby didn't even want a soda.
But anyway, you were asking me earlier what was like the most difficult thing.
And you were talking
I think it was
very eloquently.
I was talking about, you know, I found the biggest challenge by far is being accepted for who I was at a young age, because, you know, being diagnosed with autism at age 4.5 and then enter kindergarten while still struggling. And the fact that the Culver City Unified School District is small. You go to school with mostly the same people from kindergarten through 12th grade. So because of this was how I came across to and was remembered by a lot of my peers. So even after I had improved to a significant extent or recovered, I think I wasn't really seen as anything more than a neurological condition, and that just made it really hard for me to fit in socially.
And was it just the kids that you were going to school that made you feel like you didn't fit in, or was it everything?
It was really the kids, for the most part. Adults were a lot more kinder, although I can tell you I had one first grade teacher who once, I just don't think really understood what I was going through. And she actually one time told my parents that she didn't think I had any chance of succeeding. And hearing that just makes you like, wow. I mean, I feel sorry for her because she didn't understand, but still, when you are in a position where you're supposed to empower the lives of young individuals, you should never say anything like that. That's degrading.
So I gotta ask you though, because we get a lot of mail from people who say that they feel like ABA in particular causes people to feel like how they are and who they are isn't enough, and that ABA is trying to change them. And one of the things people have said to us is, where are all the adults who had ABA And you know, why don't we see them? We hear parents talking about how great ABA is, but we're all the adults who had ABA.
Right.
So what do you think? Do you feel like ABA made you feel bad about who you are and changed who you were?
You know, there's definitely a period where after services ended for me, I didn't really want to have anything to do with CARD or any of that because I just felt that it just made life difficult, especially when I'd have therapists shadow me at school. And, you know, they weren't really there to really interact with me too much, but I had an idea, and you can tell people under something is up when people are looking at you weird and they're like, what is up with Nick? And you're just trying to fit in as best as you can. But now I'm like, why try to fit in when you were born to stand out? I read that somewhere. But it wasn't really until, you know, the Recovered documentary came around, and then when I worked at the old headquarters for a couple summers that I really, and my time in college, that I really started to look at this all in a different light. And, you know, if it weren't partly for that, if not entirely, I just wouldn't be where I am today.
Okay, so, and while we're talking about this, because you were featured in the movie Recovered, and that's a word that got used in conjunction with you, that you recovered from autism at what age?
Recovered at 10, even though my services didn't end until I was 14, gradually fading out.
Okay.
Time. It was felt that there were still some things that I needed to improve.
So, do you use the word recovered? Do you say that about yourself? Do you say I recovered from autism?
I do, but you know, the way I look at it as, I probably still have some, I'll admit, I'm not perfect. I probably still have some characteristics and traits and symptoms that are characteristic of autism. But what they say is that, you know, you need to meet certain criteria in order to qualify for a diagnosis. So when you no longer meet the minimum criteria, then you would definitely be deemed recovered.
Right. And it's considered a diagnosis of a disorder.
Exactly.
Do you feel that you, at this point in your life, have a disorder?
Indeed, I sometimes, I think I, to a certain extent, I still do have disabilities in some way, but I do not let them hold me back. I don't let it hold me back, and I don't let it define who I am.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Let's eat.
Let's eat.
Any regrets?
No regrets. You know, I've had moments in life where, you know, maybe I could have said or done things differently, but, you know, experience is experience. It makes you wise, and I guess sometimes you have to go make a few mistakes to find out who you really are.
Why? You're so wise for your age, Nick. Why do you think that is? Is that just you, or is that your parents, or is that what you've been through, or a combo platter? What do you think?
Fact is, all I can say is I just know what I know. It doesn't really get any clearer than that. It's nothing.
You're very passionate about things, and you feel things so deeply, and I know how much you care about people, and you remain centered. So what ticks you off? What makes all that go away? Do you ever get mad and lose it?
I very rarely lose my temper, but definitely, let's say, there's some pet peeves that just drive me crazy, and sometimes I can be very sensitive, so if somebody just says something that makes me feel that way, that's not a good thing.
Yeah.
Or sometimes I have a hard time with accepting feedback or being told things I don't necessarily like to hear, especially from my folks, but I try my best to respond as opposed to overreacting. Because you ultimately have to realize that nobody's against you.
I want to crochet that on a pillow. There are people who need to have that said to them on a regular basis. Yeah. Nobody's against you here. I'm probably one of them.
Well, thanks again for this. Made my day.
You're absolutely welcome. Thank you for going with us.
My pleasure.
Is there anything that you wish people knew about you?
You know, this is certainly what I would like to be remembered for when I die. I just wish everybody would always know that no matter what, I always try to be and do the best I could be and do every day. And that's all that really matters.
Absolutely. Welcome back. Such a delightful time. Anytime I have an opportunity to sit and talk with Nick, it's such a delight. And he, as I said, is working here at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, a really remarkable young man, gives me lots of hope. I love when my son comes and he gets to visit with Nick as well. For those of you who watch the show and have come to watch the show in the last 3 years and notice that the opening is completely out of date. We have the opening from when we started 5 years ago. And I have brown hair then. And you look at it and you go, what's up with that? What was going on there? Well, a very distinctive thing happened. I mean, for years I had been dyeing my hair. I will tell you that I stopped dyeing it when I was pregnant because I was 40 years old and I had this foolish idea that when you're making an omelet with old eggs, everything else should be fresh. So I decided to stop dyeing my hair while I was pregnant and nursing. So for several years I'd let it go completely gray, and it was a little bit more salt and pepper than it is now, but it was still pretty gray. And it was so nice to not have to dye it. But of course, everybody was saying to me, oh, is grandma got the baby today? Right? And my husband is gray haired too. So he was getting, oh, your grandparents came to drop you off. Right? Not what you need when you're working with autism and all kinds of other stuff. So eventually I decided to start dyeing my hair again. All right, so fast forward, we're doing the show, and a couple of things happened. First, my mom passed away. Very quickly, we discovered that she had a rare blood disorder and that she wasn't going to live for very long. It was really, for all of us when we lose a loved one, and I was very close to my mom, and they were hoping that she was going to live 6 months, and she didn't even make it 6 weeks. And it was, she died on the 9th of December. And so it was, that time between Thanksgiving and Christmas. And it really, I felt like took a lot of the joy out of Christmas for me, and I was feeling all bummed about it. I was there when my mom passed away for a couple of days for the memorial service, and I hopped on a plane and came back, and all I wanted to do was get back to work. So just less than a week after she passed away, I was here in the studio, and we had started a show on that Friday. And in the middle of the show, I was interrupted in my IFB, and Emily Goodwin said to me, Shannon, we're going to take a break. You're going to want to know what's happening. Something horrible has happened in Connecticut. There's a shooting, and so many children have passed away. And some of them were special needs, and some of them were their aides. And, we were all, as a nation, we were appalled and devastated. I mean, there's no other word, right? And I remember the day after being in such a dark place and saying, I need to put something into a good column. I need to do something for someone, because the whole idea of the holiday spirit is not with me in this moment. I need to put something in a plus column. Who can I do something for? Who needs something today? I'd be happy to do something. And the very first thing that my niece said to me on the phone is, how serious are you about that? Because I know of a young man who has cancer. It's terminal cancer. It's a glioblastoma in his brain. He has a 2-year-old little girl, and my church is doing a fundraiser for this young man, for his family. And they're offering, because he's had to shave his head, if the men in the church will shave their head, there's somebody who will pay $100 per every man who shaves his head, but they'll pay $300 to shave a woman's head, and no women have volunteered. And she said, and I really, don't want to shave my head, but if you really want something to do, it would mean a lot to this family. And, at the very least, it would raise $300. And I said, okay, I'm shaving my head for this man. Now, everybody got involved and everybody had 2 cents. And so it took us 3 months and change before we had it arranged for us to do it on the show. And I want to say that young man's name, Ryan Oaf. And Ryan lived a full year after I shaved my head. But unfortunately, you know, as happens, he lost his battle with his cancer and passed away a year later. But the most amazing thing was having an opportunity to talk to Ryan on the phone once the show was over. For me, you know, talk about different reinforcers for different people and things that bother other people. I was so happy to shave my head for him because it was something I could do. To me, it was like, if that will make you happy, bring it on. Let's shave the head. I was ready to do it the next day. And honestly, I would do it again for somebody if that's what made them happy and helped them on their way. And he assured me that it helped him and gave him hope. Happy to shave my head. Now, there have been other people who have said, you know, will you jump out of a building or put on a tattoo? Well, no. You know, no, I'm afraid of those things. But shaving my head, for me, I realize for other women it's a big deal. But for me, it was like, bring that on. Let's shave that puppy. We made it a big deal in the studio and did it as part of Compassion Month. And we're going to show a clip about that in a minute so that you'll see what the full thing was. But we're going to show you just the time lapse, very short thing here of what it was like that day. You'll see the green screen, which we don't usually allow you to see, but we had so many people in the studio who were there with us. Monica Holloway, the great author of Cowboy and Wills, and a new book that's coming out that we're going to have her on the show to talk about called There Goes Perfect. Aren't we all dying to read that? Alex Plank is there, and Mark Christopher Lawrence, who you may recognize from television. He's got a series of AT&T commercials that are out right now. And Nancy Alspaugh Jackson, of course. So take a look. This is the short version of me, and they went right down the middle to start with. I love that one thing. So take a look. This is when I shaved my head. And eventually we had a barber come in towards the end who like put some foam on and did the final takedown. It was fascinating. And as I said, it's something I'll always be glad that I did. It was not at all scary for me. And having my hair grow back inspired me to keep my hair short for the rest of my life and to stop dyeing it. So that's why we got to this. But before, there was a huge build up to that before, and we did a series of commercials to let people know that we were doing this because we said, let's make this a compassion in action. Maybe I'm not the only person who wants to do something nice for somebody else, and it doesn't have to be about autism. Everybody was like, well, why are you shaving your head for a dad who has cancer? Why aren't you shaving your head for a kid who has autism? And I was like, I would gratefully shave my head for a kid who has autism, but how is that helping them? This dad, this is what he wanted. So that's what I'm doing. And I'm a person with compassion, and you don't have to be a member of my autism community in order for me to have compassion. And I was making the argument that if the autism community shows big compassion for everyone, maybe everyone will show big compassion for the autism community. And people were encouraged during the month of April to do something, an act of compassion for somebody else. And one of the commercials that we shot, somebody had the bright idea of putting a bunch of wigs on my head. Now, this is one of my favorite clips because I can be a little space cadet-y, but I want to say, for the record, this was, I think, take 4 or 5, and you can see all of the makeup on my face has been rubbed off, and I have wig burn on my forehead and cheeks from them slapping wigs on my head, but there is no teleprompter. This was all me concentrating while they abused my head. Take a look. This is compassion in action. Have you ever noticed that when you do something nice for someone else, you feel great afterwards? It's because in that moment you know you've shown kindness and compassion in a world that sometimes can seem chaotic and isolating. Well, this April, for Autism Awareness Month, Autism Live is asking everyone to put compassion in action. We all expect others to show compassion to our kids, to us, and to our families. What better way than to show compassion ourselves? That's why I'm asking everyone to do something nice for someone else. If we all take just one act of compassion, who knows? Maybe we can change the world. So watch Autism Live to find out how you can participate in our Compassion in Action campaign. And then make sure you tune in on April 8th when I will shave my head 5 for a young dad with cancer. That's my way of taking action and compassion. We are not powerless. We can create change. Compassion in action. Feel the love and the breeze. Welcome back to Autism Live. My husband and I watched that last night and we're laughing because how red my face was. But didn't I look good in the one that was the bobbed cut that was green and blue? I kind of want to dye my hair green and blue sometime, or maybe just ask for that wig. We had people all over the office donating wigs to the occasion. In any case, what a pleasure to be able to do something for somebody else. And to move that forward. Really love it. Now, okay, talk about being able to do something for somebody else. Our next clip that we have, I'm just keeping an eye on the time. We have a dear friend in our family who happens to be the actor who played the Soup Nazi. Larry Thomas was one of my husband's friends in college and has continued to be his friend. And Larry is the kind of guy that he's game, you know, he's up for whatever. And I never saw a connection between the Soup Nazi and autism until our dear friend of the show, Lisa Ackerman, who's the founder of Taka. She, and is a regular here on the show, she writes an amazing blog, which if you haven't read it, it's called Real Help Now. And you can find it at Taka Now, TACAnow.org, and just click on blog. And so she wrote a blog, and the title of it was No Soup for You. And it was all about how sometimes as an autism parent, it feels like you're talking to the Soup Nazi because everybody else gets something, but you know, you're the last one in line and there's no soup for you. And they're always well-written articles. She's hilarious, but very knowledgeable and just a brilliant person. So she wrote this article, and in it, she talked about how she's a huge Seinfeld fan. And I thought, you know, it's just too good. I gotta arrange something. So we called Larry Thomas up and asked him, would you be interested in coming and being on the show and surprising Lisa Ackerman by being in the studio with her? And let me tell you, I can't imagine what it's like to be in the Secret Service, because keeping a secret and coordinating her team and getting her all the way up here, because a lot of times she'll be on the show and sometimes because the traffic is so bad or she's got something to do last minute, she'll call and say, hey, is it a big deal if we do Skype instead? And I'll say, no, it's not a big deal, right? But if I've got the Soup Nazi coming, it's a big deal, right? So we were coming up with excuses for why she had to be here in the studio. And I said to her, there's a surprise, so you have to be here for the surprise. So she knew something was going on, and there was a buzz in the building. Because when Larry shows up and he's in the chef costume, I mean, like, you're there. You're like right there with the Soup Nazi, and he's iconic. He was nominated for an Emmy for this role. Everybody knows who the Soup Nazi is, right? So anyway, just a short clip of, we did a longer interview, and we've had Larry back on the show. By the way, he's got a cookbook out, and it's wonderful. Buy Larry's cookbook. Because he has supported us so many times. Anytime we ask him for something, for a fundraiser or something, we ask him to sign ladles for us. He's such a good sport about it. So definitely buy his cookbook and support him. But here, take a look at us surprising Lisa Ackerman from Taka. We have a very special surprise. This is Lisa Ackerman from TACA, who is a wonderful, wonderful person, and so far being so good at being surprised. We blindfolded her, and she's done nothing but kvetch about it ever since we blindfolded her. And we have a very special guest, and our at-home audience is seeing who we have. And Lisa, you recently wrote a blog. What was the name of the blog?
Well, the one you were talking about at break, right?
Yes.
It's Soup Nazi.
And so what was the name of the blog, though? Do you remember?
Yeah, No Soup for You.
Okay, so I would like somebody to say something to you while you take off your blindfold at the same time. You ready?
Am I supposed to do it now?
Yeah, take your blindfold off.
No soup for you.
Oh my God! This is a thrill. Hi.
So,
oh my God!
Soup Nazi gets a hug. How do you like that?
So Lisa, I would like to introduce you to Larry Thomas, the
Nice to meet you.
Emmy-nominated actor who portrayed the Soup Nazi on Seinfeld. We were able.
You get stopped on the street. For like, you know,
Sometimes.
We saw your blog and we sent it to Larry and said, here is an autism mom who has compared her experience to the Soup Nazi, and he very graciously agreed to come in and surprise you. Did you have any idea?
No.
Good.
Very hard to keep a secret from you. Of all things, what did you think was going to be there?
You know what? It could have been a pony. It could have been so bad. You're so random like me. I had no idea.
Makes my face hurt because I adore her so much. She's such a fun mom and has so much energy, man. What I wouldn't give to have half of her energy. And Larry is just the sweetest thing. I mean, he plays this, very character, a Soup Nazi, but he's one of the nicest people on the face of the earth, one of the gentlest souls on the face of the earth. And to see them together was just really, really fun. Again, check out Lisa's blog because it's fabulous, and definitely check out Larry's Soup Nazi cookbook. It's really incredible. I said, it's kind of ironic that, he got cast for this role, but he happened to be somebody who was a really good cook. He was like the guy in college that was always cooking for everybody else, and everybody was always saying, hey, what's your chili recipe? So check it out. Check out his cookbook. Okay, so earlier in the show, I talked about when we went to Texas last year for the Future Horizons Conference. They have conferences all over the country on a regular basis, and if you think, wow, I really want to meet Temple Grandin, well, that's the way you're going to do it, because Temple speaks on a regular basis at Future Horizon conferences, and she's there and she does book signings, and you have an opportunity to go up and take a picture and be with her. And if it's on your bucket list to do that, then you should do that. Temple is in good health, and she's, relatively young for today's standards, but, none of us are spring chickens anymore. Let's be honest about that. And you should treat yourself to the experience of meeting Temple. You really, really should. And seeing her speak, it's so inspirational. And by the way, when you go to the super conferences that they have other speakers too. And I guarantee you it's life-changing. It's life-changing to be in the room with these people. It just is. And one of the guests that we had when we went to the super conference in Dallas was one of the other speakers, Alexis Weinman. Now, Alexis is the young woman who decided to be in a pageant and got quite far, and notably was given the award for Miss Congeniality. I think that's the name that they call it. In any case, I'd heard a lot about her, but had not met her until this interview. What a delightful young woman she is. Such an inspiration, and so fabulous to have a woman like her to be able to show the spectrum of ages between Dr. Temple Grandin, who is a college professor and, an international speaker, and then Alexis, who's young and hip, and to have that to be able to show our young men and women on the spectrum, so exciting. So take a look. This is us with Alexis Weinman.
I am Alexis Weinman at the Future Horizons Super Conference in Dallas, Texas. It helped me in a way because it was a format that I was not used to. Like, I had never curled my hair before. I've never worn heels. I didn't know what foundation was. And it was just, it was a very, like, it helped me more in a business sense. Like, I know how to present myself in front of people now. That's something my mom drilled into my head. I have trouble sometimes with it. Like, you introduced yourself to me downstairs, and so I immediately, like, and I've heard of you before, so I was like, I know this person, I can make eye contact with this person. And if I'm talking to someone I don't know, or if I'm listening to someone give a speech, most of the time my head will be down. I don't look at people in the eye, but if it's someone I know I need to make eye contact with, I make eye contact. But my mom growing up, she, especially after the diagnosis, she would always like grab my hand if I was like, you know, looking everywhere else but her, and she'd like say, look me in the eye. And so she wouldn't let go of my hand until I looked her in the eye. I do feel like I have to do play part because, you know, sometimes there'll be jokes I don't understand, but I'll laugh at anyway. There will be situations that I'm not comfortable with, but I'm going to have to play along anyway. And I think I just found out, like, I'm just a tremendously amazing liar. Like, I can pretend like I'm uncomfortable with something when in actuality I am screaming inside, or I know the moment I get back to my dorm room I'm going to start screaming or having a meltdown or something like that. But I also know that there is a time and a place because there isn't any safe rooms available in neurotypical society. Like, we have to make our own. And, you know, on a college campus, there's not many places you can go and scream without attracting attention. The way I explain it to people is, you know, people's brains are like hamster wheels. Eventually, the hamster's got to take a break. Autistic brains aren't like that. They just keep going and going and going. So we can't stop thinking about things. There's like, that's why a lot of kids with autism have sleep problems, because they can't fall asleep because they have too much on their brain. They can't sleep because they're thinking too much. And I think just the walking in circles, there's no thought to a circle. Like, it's just, like, so I'll just plug in my earphones so I can't hear anything else except whatever white noise I'm listening to, and I'll just walk in a circle. I think it's just like we are just as prevalent as men with autism. There might not be as many as there are boys, but we are still part of this movement. We're still part of this community, and we just got to remind people that, hey, you know, we're here too. You know, don't forget about us. One thing I've learned is that, first off, I'm not the only person who is speaking from their own perspective. Like, I feel like I go to some of these conferences and it's a bunch of doctors and a bunch of parents who want to talk and get to know what autism is about, but there's not a lot of people on the spectrum talking about it. And so I come to these and I see Temple Grandin, who's one of the biggest faces in the autism community, actually get up and talk about what helped her and what we need to do in order to get our kids out of society and not in our parents' basements. And so it's just kind of reaffirming, like, I'm not the only one. Thank you. Because I go to these and I would be the only one. I'd be next to a bunch of doctors and talking about words I have not even seen before, let alone pronounce. And I'm just sitting here like, I did a pageant once. So it's good to know, like, I'm speaking from a perspective of not necessarily overcoming, but learning to live with this, because I feel like not a lot of people come out and say what it's like to live on the autism spectrum. A lot of people talk about the struggles and everything like that, but they don't talk about, you know, what they've done to make their lives better while living on the spectrum.
An amazing young woman. I thoroughly encourage you, get to a Future Horizon conference and see these two women speak. And a lot of times there's other great people on the bill. That particular day, it was Dr. Grandin, across the weekend. They weren't all on the same day. Dr. Grandin, Kara Kaczynski, who we love, the Pocket OT, Dr. Jed Baker, who it was my first time meeting him in person. He's the one who wrote the book, No More Meltdowns, but also the book, I'm going to mess up what the name of it is, but it's the overcoming anxiety in teens and children. And there's a whole section on it on overcoming anxiety for teens and children on the autism spectrum. Oh, listen. Sometimes you're someplace and you get to meet people and you get to see if they're the real deal or not. My son was so well behaved the entire time he was there with us, and we were up in a small room. It was in a church in Dallas, and there was a small room that was right off of the rectory, where they kept all the choir gowns. Right, that was where we were doing the interviews. And we'd been doing this for 2 days, and my son was so well behaved, but sometimes they just hit that wall, and he was not feeling it when Dr. Baker came in. And it didn't have anything to do with Dr. Baker, because that was before, and I was nervous about everything, and there was this whole thing with where the camera's going to work with Dr. Grandin. So I had that kind of energy going on myself, and so I wasn't Johnny on it in terms of parenting. I was trying to wear two hats at the same time, and you know how sometimes that causes you to fall and hit your face on the road. Or at least me, I don't want to speak for anybody else. So anyway, my son was kind of with me, and I was kind of with him, and then Dr. Baker comes in the room, and I am not using my tools well, and going, and he's making noises. My son immediately goes to an old stim and starts making these high-pitched noises. So it's like having R2-D2 in the room while you're doing an interview with this gentleman that I so admire and so respect. And instead of just keeping on, and he was like, "Hey, can we just stop for a second? Like, he's really doing okay, and can we just and I said, and I was so embarrassed. I was like, no, he'll get it together, and I'll move him over here." And he was like, "Hey, he's fine. Can I just talk to him for a minute? Can, let's find out what's going on with him." Real deal. So Dr. Jed Baker, check him out, because I'm sure he has huge fans, but I would venture that I'm just about one of his biggest fans ever. And that's what you find when you go to Future Horizons conferences. And they have other speakers too that go in and out. So check out their things. Now, at another Future Horizon conference that we were at, Nancy Alspaugh-Jackson had never met Temple Grandin, and I had met her a couple of different times. And I had said to Nancy, the next time that we're somewhere where Temple is going to be, you're going to interview her. And she was like, "Well, I'm sure that you would want to interview her too." And I said, "No, this one's going to be all yours. I'm going to take a back seat. I'm going to take more of a producer role on this. You are going to interview Dr. Grandin." And it ended up being at a Future Horizon conference, and we were supposed to have a little room where we could interview her before the book signing, and something kind of went wonky. I don't know, but we were in the same room where the book signing was supposed to happen, so everybody was in line to do the book signing, and they were there watching as Nancy did this interview. And Nancy was killer. She was I was so proud of her. She did such a good job. I think this is a much better interview that I have ever done with Temple. So take a look. This is my friend Nancy Alspaugh-Jackson talking to my friend Dr. Temple Grandin.
Dr. Grandin, what is it like for you personally to have become the most celebrated person in the field of autism?
Well, I feel it's a responsibility. I get a lot of emails and letters from young kids. In fact, at the last conference I was at, I got a whole envelope of letters from kids in an English class. What makes me pleased is I think I'm inspiring a lot of kids to succeed, because I want to see kids succeed. Now, one problem I'm seeing with some of the fully verbal kids is they're not getting stretched enough. I see kids coming up to me at conferences where nobody's taught them how to shake hands. See, when I was a young child, I had to be party host at my mother's parties, had to shake hands, say please and thank you, have table manners, learn how to shop. And I'm seeing too many situations where they aren't learning those basic skills.
Yeah, so you really think they need the basic skills that every child should learn?
Yes. Now, in the 50s, every child was taught social skills. in a much more structured way. And today that's not the case. Now the so-called normal kids, they pick it up, but the autistic kids have got to be taught, and that's not being done enough.
What kind of preconceptions, though, do you think most people have about relating to those with ASD?
Autism is a really big spectrum. You're going all the way from Silicon Valley down to somebody with a lot of intellectual challenges. Now, the kinds of services and things a person needs is very different, those two ends of the spectrum. And I go to different places. I go to Silicon Valley, and I see a lot of people that I know are on the spectrum. And then I go see another kid that's smart at math, but nothing's being done to develop his skills, and he's getting addicted to video games. And they are the same kind of kid. The thing that I'm seeing, especially on the mild end of the spectrum, is too many kids sort of becoming the label. I'm very concerned about them getting a handicap mentality. Then I go over to the meatpacking plant, and there's a whole maintenance shop of old hippies that I know are on the spectrum, and they run that maintenance shop, and they've been there for years and years and years.
Why do you think the numbers, 1 in 68 now, have risen so dramatically?
I think on the mild end of the spectrum, it's increased detection. Because I can think of kids I went to elementary school with, kids I went to college with, that today would be diagnosed on the spectrum. I think that's a big part of it on the mild end of the spectrum. Now, I think there also is some severe autism that may have actually increased because there's more environmental contaminants and there's more medications being given during early pregnancy.
Dr. Grandin, you beg parents not to let their children with autism be defined by the DSM or the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. Why?
Well, I think the DSM made a big mistake removing Asperger's syndrome, because under the DMS-4, autism you had to have speech delay, Asperger was no speech delay. Now, you could argue scientific reasons for taking out the speech delay stuff, but from a service provider standpoint, you know, the kind of services that somebody's nonverbal has is different than a mild kid with Asperger's. And I'm seeing too many fully verbal kids, less severe than me, getting put into a class with nonverbal kids. I'm seeing too many smart kids not learning job skills. That's another thing that I really push. Because when I was 13, my mother had got me in a sewing job. When I was 15, I was cleaning horse stalls. It's really important that students intern in a job before they graduate from high school. They got to learn that discipline of getting to work.
If you could speak to every business owner in America, what would you say to convince them to hire somebody on the autism spectrum?
Well, there's certain things they can do extremely well. In fact, the SAP Corporation is hiring people with autism. There's another Project Search, where there's work being done with collaborating with hospitals to train them to set up surgical instruments for different types of surgery. And they take longer to train, but once they're trained, they're super, super good and meticulous about making sure the instruments are set up right. And that's got about a 78% employment rate.
So you think the skills that those with ASD have to offer are often overlooked by people that employ?
As I said before, I can think of kids that I went to college with that definitely were on the autism spectrum. Those individuals are all employed in good jobs. And I think a lot of this gets back to pounding those manners in the 50s and the 60s, and kids being on things like paper routes, where they learned work skills.
Why do you think the experts in the field of ASDs focus so intensely on the deficits and not on the strengths of autism?
Well, we need to be building up strengths. My ability in art was always encouraged. And I was encouraged to do lots of different kinds of art. If you got a third grader that's good at math, and he can do a high school math book, let him do the high school math book. Don't hold them back.
I want to know why you think that so little attention has been paid to the sensory processing issues. What can we learn from those?
Well, I just heard about a brand new study that's been done up at in California, Dr. Wu, and they took children aged 4 through 12 that had speech delay, and they stayed in their regular programs, ABA or whatever the speech therapy the school was doing, and then they got an hour a day of sensory therapy where they did a lot of variety of stimulation, like walk on different kinds of flooring, smell different smells, do different activities in a mirror, big variety, always doing more than one sensory thing at a time. And it was done as a controlled experiment, where half the kids just got the regular treatment and the other half got this added sensory treatment. And they got some really big, significant improvements. And they made the point of using all very inexpensive things that would be in any house.
There's so much division in the autism community. How do you think we can all come together and
Well,
find a common ground?
I think that merging Asperger's together with autism has made all of this worse, because you have a segment of very, very severely handicapped kids where they're never going to be able to live independently. That's a very different kind of situation than a mild Asperger's type of kid. You see, you're putting too many apples and oranges together. Every other diagnosis, like dyslexia, learning problems, ADHD, you've got a fully verbal kid. Only in autism, right now, are you getting a range going from, smart computer geek down to somebody who has very, very severe challenges. Now, I think the American Psychiatric Association originally figured the Asperger kids would get into this social communication category. That's not what's happening. Nobody's going into that because there's no funding for it.
As the most admired person in this field, and we are literally becoming an autism nation, what do you think the most important thing is for us to be aware of?
Well, there's a point where personality variants are just normal variation. I think a brain can be made more cognitive and thinking, or a brain can be made more social. Now, at what point does that become abnormal? There's no black and white dividing line. I'm getting concerned that what we're saying is abnormal is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Obviously, a child that has severe speech delay, that's an abnormality. But when you take the kids that are just kind of socially awkward, a lot of those kids are really smart. And then you got the person that's a total social butterfly. And let's think back to the caveman days. I don't think the social yak-yaks around the campfire made the first stone spear.
Dr. Grandin, thank you for inspiring all of us as parents and children.
Isn't that a great interview? Nancy is just amazing. She did such a great job, and she looks so good on camera, and she just has such a great way. I just love that laugh at the end. Again, we want to thank Emily Goodwin and Matthew Scheller for doing such a great job and making that all happen. It's not easy to take production and go on the road and not know what kind of space you're going to be and what kind of lighting you're going to be in, and they did an amazing job. My son also crewed for that event, and as I said, it's so interesting to see when people are the real deal, and come and be around me sometime and you'll, oh my gosh, you'll be like, all right, well, she's a crazy woman. But when we went to that event, again, I'm trying to wear two hats, got the parent hat on, and it was the first time that Jem was going to meet Temple Grandin, and I wanted him to come. He could have been in school. I pulled him out of school that day. I also pulled him out of school to go see her in Texas, too. Well, you know what? Sometimes there are things that are more educational than other things. I'm sorry. I'm not going to apologize for it. Okay, so that was his first time meeting Temple, and I didn't know that he was going to have other opportunities in life. And so we went to that. So I'm trying to wear two hats and, produce and make everything happen and make sure my kid is happy and not going to be disruptive while we're filming. And he hung out with Emily and Matt so much and was helping them set up and tear down and showed such an interest in it and was asking questions that I kind of relaxed. And it was so funny to me, and they were just hanging out with him and talking with him and joking with him and so on and so forth. And I remember afterwards saying something to Emily about, thank you so much for being so kind to my child. And she was like, what are you talking about? He's wonderful, and we had a good time with him. Why are you thanking us for spending time with him? You gotta love people like that, right? Because that's what you want your kid to be around. And those are the kinds of adult role models that you want your kid to be around. It was a good time. Okay, so we have one more of our clips of videos to show you, and that is, we did a series of events where one summer we went around to some of the highlights. We started with the zoo. We went to some of the highlights of things to do in Los Angeles, and this was inspired by the fact that years before I was ever doing any kind of a show, summer was coming along, right? And Jem was, I want to say, I think it was the summer between preschool and kindergarten. And we were really trying to work very hard in our program at CARD on play dates and socialization and being out in public and being able to sort through all the sensory things that happen along with all the social things that happen when you're out in public and when you're out in public with a friend. So CARD had said to us, Is he going to go to camp? Well, I couldn't afford camp. Okay, let's just keep it on a very real basis here. Camp was really stinking expensive, and there was no money in the coffer for camp. And they were saying, well, that's fine, but we need regular intervals when we can count on the fact that he's going to be around other kids. So I put on my thinking cap and was like, all right, how am I going to make this happen? We got to go on outings, but like field trips. It can't have much cost because, boy, it was, this is when everything was crashing and burning and nobody had any money, right? And I need to be able to have other kids go. So how am I going to pull this off? So we created something called Thursdays with Jem. And we set a schedule for the entire summer. And the reason why we chose Thursdays was because it was a day, at that point, I think it's changed now, it might be Tuesdays now in Los Angeles, but at that point it was Thursdays that most of the museums and kids' activities would have one day a week, and some of them were one day a month, but they happened to fall on Thursdays where it was free or incredibly low cost. So if you went on that day, you were going to fight with bigger crowds, but you were going to be able to do it for free. And since we were wanting to be around crowds to work on that, kind of worked for me, right? So we made a schedule for the whole summer, and we posted it on Facebook and said, this is what we're going to be doing on this day and this day and this day, and who would like to come with us. And I was nervous because what if, and I sent it out to, I think, every single parent that had been in his preschool, everybody that was in the neighborhood, any friend that I had that had kids. I mean, I found like anybody that I could find to invite to it. And we were like, what happens if they all want to go? Like it could be 100 people between the kids and their siblings and the parents going. And I thought, well, I'm just going to trust that it's going to work out. And on the same token, what if nobody ever came? And it worked out that we went to all these amazing things that summer. Every Thursday we were in a different place. And every Thursday, one or two different kids, it worked out with their schedule to come. And each Thursday it was, I don't know whether they all got together and said, all right, which one of you is going to go with her to this? That might have been the case. It doesn't matter to me. It worked. We always had somebody with us, and it wasn't a huge group. We always packed a picnic lunch so that, we would sit on the lawn of wherever we were and have the lunch. We packed snacks. And we had a great time. And so years later, when I was here doing the show, I thought, well, I want to go back to some of those places and let's show some of the things that we did that were super amazing. So if you come to LA, these are great things to do. And one of my favorites is going to the Noah's Ark exhibit in the Skirball Center here in Los Angeles. Oh my goodness. And they opened it for us, and they were so delightful. They were so amazing. We brought along Jem's friend Kenny and had a play date out of it. So take a look. This is the Noah's Ark exhibit at the Skirball Museum. We're very excited because we're in the Noah's Ark exhibit, and we're here with Jason Porter. Thank you for taking us on this tour.
Oh, thanks for having us.
So you're going to show me around a little bit and show me some of the secrets of the Noah's Ark exhibit, right?
Yeah, I'd be happy to.
Cool, let's go. Yeah. So Jason, tell us, this is an amazing space. Why is it so incredible for children?
One of the values of the Skirball Cultural Center is taking care of the earth and one another, and so this idea of repurposing materials that would otherwise be tossed off was a big component to how we designed the galleries. It's based on, certainly the story that everyone knows is the one from the Hebrew Bible, the story of Noah. But in our research, we looked at over 200 flood stories from around the world, and many different cultures have flood stories that have similarities, and the similarities that we identified were these three chapters: a storm, some crazy challenge that comes to your life; an ark, a kind of means of survival, a way for a community to come together to survive; and finally the rainbow, which is this kind of symbol of hope, the second chance to make the world anew.
Love it. All right, let's take a look through, and we're going to talk about some of the learning opportunities that are available here.
We really wanted people to kind of discover what they were supposed to do. For example, this elephant has a gong in the center, and there's a little wheel here that you can turn and see what happens. But there's also some hidden things, like there's a little peephole in this polar bear, so it's kind of a moment where you could talk with your kids about what does it mean that that polar bear in there only has a small piece of ice to live on it, and you could talk about kind of the environmental issues that might be associated with it.
All right, should we go downstairs?
Yeah, let's check out the storm.
So Jason, what do you call this room?
This is called the Storm Gallery. In one side of the gallery, we have a storm wall, which is all sorts of sounds and sight effects to make the storm come to life. But we have this, what we call the load up. It's fairly intuitive. You know, you put animals onto the conveyor belt and you turn the wheel and they get loaded up onto the ark. Except you can't do both at the same time by yourself. It's kind of layered in the doing, the learning that we're really interested in, which is about this notion of working together in order to accomplish something. So, you know, when you first get on the ark, obviously you enter 2 by 2 as the story goes. And so the animals in this first section of the ark, you know, they're not quite sure where they should be. They're a little bit nervous about who to hang out with. The gallery is really organized so that the animals are still in pairs. So we talk a lot about what are the elements of home that you need to survive. And it's really a nice kind of intro into the whole experience of being in a community, learning to be together with people who may or may not be the same as us. This gallery of Noah's Ark is unique, I think, in terms of the way that it was designed, that it offers a huge variety of experiences in a way that really accommodates people of all stripes and spots. So there are more quiet zones, like we just left in the move-in day, where you can come into this room where you have a lot of large motor things that are happening, including climbing, and we kind of have nicknamed this the arcade. It's kind of the chapter in the story where they're making new families and they're mixing with other animals that they've befriended. Oh, we have to talk about poop.
We can't do a show without talking about poop.
So, you know, the other fact of life on an ark is that everybody poops. So the challenge is to, you know, clean up.
Okay, so we're in the last room, very cool room. What do we call this room?
We call this the Rainbow Gallery. You know, people really get that this is a place of hope. Sometimes there's an art-making project, that it ends in some sort of inspiration, that people feel like they're inspired to take action in the world and make it a better place.
Thank you so much for showing us everything and telling us about all the wonderful things at the Skirball Center. Welcome back. What a wonderful place. I don't know how well it reads if you haven't been there before, but each and every piece in that museum is handcrafted from recycled materials, and you could spend forever. It's so clever. And there's something, I love things that have so much depth that there's something for everyone in it, right? So for me as the adult, I stand there and I go, oh, now look, and I love crafts. So I go, oh, look at how they put together that crocodile. It's partly tire, and then there's a red glove, and what is that they used for the eyeball? What does that remind me of? You know, and having to think it through. Boy, I could spend hours in that museum going through each animal and figuring out what it is. Whereas my son, there are different phases of the ark as you go through that, you know, there's the first phase where it's outside the ark and you can send animals up on a treadmill, but you have to put them you have to match and pair things together 2 by 2. And then you see how the treadmill works, and you can crank machines. So there's like a machine that's all made from recycled materials where you crank it and it makes the storm, or it makes the ears on the elephant move, or it makes, you know, the neck on the giraffe move. I mean, there's all these kinetic things. And so there's something to do. But then you move into the next room, which is the underbelly of the ship. And boy, that's the room that my son always loved to be in. It's got all these cargo nets that the kids climb in, and they get all their yayas out. Like, it's really hands-on, spectacular. And then there's another room where they do activities, and the depths and the layers. We mentioned the poo because we can't do a show without talking about the poo, as I said. And it's like I'm obsessed. I'm not obsessed with poo. But there is this part of the museum where you have to walk around and you have to match the tracks of animals on the floor if you really want to. You don't have to. But it's a fun thing to do with different age range, and if the kids are interested in that. And then they have poo laying around, plastic poo. And you have to find the poo, pick it up, and go find the chart and figure out, is this coyote poo or is this chicken poo? I'm sorry, those are the educational experiences that we remember, right? I don't know if my son remembers it, but I think he remembers other things about it. But I guess that's the preference assessment. And then there's a final room that you go into that we showed, the rainbow room, where you go in and they have crafts and they have shows and they have things like that. So in any case, so much to do. And there are special times where you can go when it's significantly cheaper. Now, here's the deal with the Noah's Ark. If you come to Los Angeles and you want to do it, you must. I cannot believe that I still have not taken my niece to see it. And I keep saying each time that they're here to visit, I'm like, I got to do it this next time. But you reserve a time. And so that's how it works, because they have to keep it so that it's not all crowded at the same time. So you reserve a time, you tell them how many people are in your party, and there are times when it's cheaper and even free, I think. But you reserve a time, and then you have a window of time in which you go in, and you can stay as long as you like, but once you leave, you cannot get back in. So you need to know that before you take off and go to the Noah's Ark exhibit. Okay, so I wanted to take just a couple of minutes to talk about how fortunate I am to have the ability to be here with you guys in this format. And I don't want to get all mushy about it, but you know I will. But I really want to take a second to talk about how much of a privilege it is for me to have the opportunity to talk to you guys and to hear from you and to sit in your classroom and learn from all of you, from the things that you guys write in and say to us. And, you know, I've been going through, while we've been talking and doing the clips, while the clips have been running, while I've been listening to them, I've been going through and seeing all the messages that people have written to me on Facebook, and it's amazing to me how many of them are people that I have met through this show, whether they're autism experts or other autism parents that I've met through this show, and viewers that I've met through this show that are like family to me now. You know who you are. When we first started this show, and people were like, oh, I'm going to be in town, and, you know, I want to meet you, and can we come by the studio? I was like, oh, I don't know. Like, you know, is that something we do? I don't know you. And yet we've had the opportunity to meet so many of you when we've gone to conferences and we've gone to walks and things, and you've all become a part of my family. And I think, as important to me, you've become a part of my son's family. And you know what an important thing that is. So I so appreciate all of you. I appreciate your well wishes on my birthday. But day to day, I appreciate you being here and helping me by being a part of my community. I'm as thrilled as I can be to try to be a member, a worthy member of your community, but I tell you every day that I'm grateful for the fact that you are in my community, because we all need that, right? Isn't that just the truth? We all need to know that we've got people who have our backs. I wanted to just take a second to look at some of the questions and comments that you guys have written in. Somebody said, wow, do they have easy to understand classes for parents and advocates? I'm in amazement about the 1-year-old program. And that comes from our good friend, Mike Hipple, who wrote in and said, happy birthday to me this morning on Facebook. Thank you, Mike. You know, I would say to you, even for the 1-year-olds, the work that they're doing, I'm assuming what you're referring to is when we had Dave Humphrey on yesterday and talking about the study that they're doing with the Denver Early Start. I want to remind you that it was actually Dr. Graham-Pichet's program, so it has great similarities to the Denver Start program, but it's basically the card method. And so if you want to know more about that, if you don't already have the card book, I would encourage you to do that, because that's the work that Dr. Graham-Pichet did with the kids in that study to show that, you know, they could turn things around at a really early age. So definitely check out the card book, which has a very long title, but basically is effective treatments for autism, the CARD model. Somebody else wrote in, happy birthday to you. You are more than a great mom. You're an amazing advocate for the disability community. That was from Mike again. And P.S. I was the one who asked about the documentary. And I'm not sure which documentary question that was, Mike. And then somebody said, Shannon, ideas what to say to a teen who doesn't want the token system and doesn't want his therapist. He questions why most other people don't have a therapist and why other teens can just go buy what they want without any restrictions, having to fulfill any responsibilities. And thank you for your infinite wisdom and humor, Haircut Mom. P.S. Great ideas about the mommy-daddy dollars. Somebody else said, OMG, Shannon, it's like you have precog abilities. Driving with Nick Yates was perfect timing. He is so inspirational, soulful. Thank you for all you do. Somebody else said, so sorry to hear about your loss and sharing your emotions. You are amazing and love it, Shannon. Amazing wigs. Keep your focus. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about the token system for teens. We talked about this a little bit yesterday, but you know, this is something that Nancy and I have talked about a lot. Martha Herbert has a book, and the name of it is escaping me right now, but Martha Herbert. I don't know, I can't think, I can picture the cover, but I can't think what the title of it is, and I don't want to get it wrong. Okay, but in the beginning of the book, she talks about a boy who goes to his mom and he says, I don't have autism anymore, so I don't have to have therapy anymore. And the mom is like, well, you do have autism still, and you still need the therapist, and the therapist still need to come. And then she goes to see Dr. Herbert, and Dr. Herbert goes, I think your son's trying to tell you something. I think your son is trying to tell you that he's ready to do things that he wasn't ready to do before. And let's really take a look at that. Let's look at maybe he knows more than we do. And it was so, moving to me that we had gotten to a place in Jem's program where my new normal became ABA therapy and having therapists around. And I got really comfortable. Like the first 2 years, I was like, why do I have to have this? And then the next 3 years, I was like, yeah, no, this is my life. And I wasn't really seeing the day was going to come when the therapists weren't going to come. And when somebody talked about it, I had a panic attack. Like, what, you're going to take the therapists away from me now? You got me used to them. I'm addicted to them, and now you're going to take them away? Where is the sense in that? But my son, was putting up a fuss and saying, I don't want them here anymore. He used to love it when the therapist would come. And that was important that he loved it when they came. But he got to a point where it wasn't just that he was unhappy with the therapy, right? It was like, I want to go play with my friends. Why the other kids are out there playing? Why can't I go and play? And I kind of never knew what to say. And then along came Sienna Greener-Wooten, and Sienna said to him, oh, and she recognized it because she sees this all the time in kids. It's the first step towards being done. So congratulate yourself that your son is there. Like, woohoo! He's working in the right direction. This is a plus. When your kid goes, I don't want to do this anymore, you're on the right track. You're doing it all right, okay? The Autism Revolution. Thank you so much, Samantha. That's Martha Herbert's book. The Autism Revolution. There we go. Great. And we have an interview with her that you can check out too. Amazing woman. Okay. And good friends with Dr. Grant Boucher. Okay. So in any case, first step is that they identify that they don't want to do it anymore and that they've noticed that it's different than what everybody else has. Great, great, great. So then Sienna took it to the next place for me, and she said to my son, here are the 5 things that you still aren't doing on a regular basis that your mom and dad want to see happen, and we want to see that you're able to do it. Then if you choose not to do it, it's up to you at that point. But we need to see that you're capable of doing it and that you're capable in doing it in many different situations, and that you can keep it up and do it. And he was like, really? Is that all I have to do? And then we get to stop this nonsense? And she said, yep, if you can do this. And so they put him on a plan that if he could do it across 2 sessions, the 3rd session, the next session, canceled. They'd send the therapist home. And so he was like, oh, I got this. This is a piece of cake. So he would do it. 3rd session, she was gone. And we clipped along like that. And then he did that so many times in a row that they said, okay, now if you do it in 1 session, the 2nd session, so every other session will be canceled instead of every 3rd session. He was like, I got this. And he didn't even notice that he was being backed out of ABA therapy. I noticed. I noticed big time. And while they were doing that, they made his reinforcers more meaningful to him and less noticeable. The truth of the matter is that your son who's saying, you know, why do other kids, they're not having to work for it? Yes, they are. He's just not seeing it because they don't see it. You know, the kid down the street who gets to go outside and just play on his scooter had to make his bed before he did it. It's just people don't talk about that, right? Now, you can talk about it with him, but you can also make things more, you know, you don't make it a token system anymore. You just go, here are the rules. And I try to, every time my son has a birthday or something big that's happening, I go, oh, congratulations, you're 13 now. That's so exciting. Guess what you get to have when you're 13? You get to have this, and you get to have more freedom to do X, Y, and Z. Now that comes with responsibility. You have to show me that you can handle it, and you have to earn it. Otherwise, we have to go back to the last step. And then he's like, oh, well, that's reasonable because he just heard what his paycheck was first, right? So it's like, oh, well, so I get to, you know, decide more of this, but I just have to do this about it? Okay. And, you know, you have to prove to them that that reinforcement really comes, and you got to start small and make it easy enough so that they can succeed. I'm out of time, Samantha's telling me. But in any case, you want to fade it because, you know, we don't want to have somebody be 30 years old and have a token system where it's like putting things on with the Velcro. I don't want that. Do you want that? So we start to do the preference assessment. Ask him, all right, what makes it worthwhile for you instead of the token system? So what is it you want? Once you ask them what you want, what do you want? I don't want to do therapy anymore. Okay, so here's the stuff that you got to do. That'll be your reinforcer that will cancel therapy, but here's what you got to do first. You'll find that sometimes they'll be a little like, but then if they see that, oh, if I really do this, then you cancel therapy, oh, they do it. So get excited. You're at a good place. That's a good place to be at, all right? We're going to be back next Wednesday. Very excited about that. And we've got great guests for you coming up for the rest of this month. So we're out of time. Thank you for all your birthday wishes, and thank you for being with me on this ride. Give your kiddos a hug from me, one for you too. Bye-bye for now.